far out at sea, where the water is as blue as the purest sapphire and as clear as crystal, it is very, very deep. So deep that no anchor can reach the bottom, and many church towers would need to be stacked on top of one another to reach from the seafloor to the surface. Down there lives the sea folk. In the very deepest spot of all rises the Sea King's castle. The Sea King was a widower, and his household was kept in order by his elderly mother. She was a wise and noble mermaid, proud of her royal blood. She loved her 6 granddaughters dearly. The princesses were all beautiful. There were 6 mermaid princesses, each born 1 year apart, with the eldest being 20 years old and the youngest 15. Together, they formed a graceful and inseparable bond beneath the waves. But the youngest was the fairest of all. Her skin was as delicate as a rose petal, her eyes as blue as the deep sea, her hair long and red, and her tail shimmered in green and silver. Outside the castle were beautiful gardens of many kinds, and among them each mermaid princess had her own, decorated in a different way. The Little Mermaid's garden was a perfect round bed, its sandy floor a deep, shimmering blue. Only bright red, shining flowers grew there, their petals blazing like tiny flames. In the center stood a statue of a handsome young man, about 20 years old, and beside him a red weeping willow leaned gracefully, its long branches almost touching the blue sand below and bending over the statue as if to shelter him. The Little Mermaid liked best of all to hear stories about the world above the sea. She had an old grandmother who willingly told her everything she knew about ships, towns, people, and animals. Above all, she loved the flowers of the earth, for they did not grow under the sea, and the bright fish swimming among the branches of her garden she thought far lovelier than any on land. She was often quite sad because she could not rise up to the world above, where humans lived.
You are 15 years old. When you reach the age of 21, you may rise up out of the sea and sit upon the rocks in the moonlight, watching the ships as they pass by. You may even gaze upon the distant towns and the dark silhouettes of the woods along the shore, hearing the faint sounds of music and laughter drifting across the water.
The eldest princess had reached her 21st birthday and was allowed to rise to the surface. When she returned, she spoke of many things, but what she loved most was lying on a sandbank in the quiet moonlight, gazing at a nearby town where lights sparkled like stars, and listening to the distant music and voices of people. The second sister went up the next year and found the sunset most beautiful. The third sister saw a forest and the birds singing among the green branches. The fourth saw hills of blue and lilac with waterfalls. The fifth saw great icebergs floating in the sea. At last it was the youngest's turn. She rose silently and floated near a great ship. Music and singing came from the vessel, and when darkness fell, 100 lanterns were lit. Among all the people, the most handsome of all was the young prince, with large dark eyes. It was his birthday, and they were celebrating. But then a terrible storm rose, the sea churning under a sky split by lightning. Waves towered and crashed, shattering the ship into splinters. The prince was cast into the black depths, his strength fading. Through the roar of the tempest, the Little Mermaid darted to him, her arms cradling his head above the water. She glided through the foaming waves, never letting go, until at last the storm began to fade, and she laid him gently upon the quiet shore. After laying him on the sand, she watched him closely to make sure he was still alive. as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The prince lay on the sand of a quiet beach, near white walls with a temple rising behind them. A young girl approached and helped him to his feet. She led him toward the temple to care for him, while far out in the waves, the mermaid watched silently before slipping back beneath the sea. From that day, the mermaid thought only of the prince. She listened to her sisters talk about the world above, but none had seen him. She asked her grandmother about human beings, and whether they could live forever.
Humans. They live shorter lives than we do, my dear. But when their time ends, something precious happens. They have an immortal soul, a light within that rises up beyond the sea, beyond the clouds, up to the stars themselves. We mermaids, however, when we die, we dissolve into foam upon the waves and vanish forever.
The little mermaid often sat in silence, deep in thought. She remembered well what her grandmother had once told her, that only if a man loved her so much that she would be dearer to him than his own father and mother could she gain such a soul. But that, she said, was impossible, for to humans the mermaids' tales were ugly. To them, beauty lay only in the two limbs they called legs. Still, the little mermaid dreamed of having an immortal soul. She grew quieter and more pensive with each passing day, until one day she could keep her thoughts to herself no longer and confided in one of her sisters. She told her how she longed to find the prince again, how she had searched for him many times, rising to the surface in the place where she had left him, yet never catching sight of him. But her sisters kept no secrets from one another, and soon they all knew the truth. One sister, remembering the ship, recalled seeing the prince and realized where he lived. They took the little mermaid to the place, and at last, she saw the prince again. After seeing the prince, the little mermaid made her decision. She would go to the sea witch. She swam toward the swirling whirlpools, behind which the witch lived. No flowers grew there, only a barren, sandy ground where the water twisted into terrifying currents. She had to pass through these dark whirlpools, each one so strong it could drag a ship into the depths. Beyond them lay the heart of a dreadful forest, where the trees and shrubs were half animal, half plant. Their twisted trunks looked like serpents writhing in the sand, and their long branches reached out like arms, clutching at everything they could seize beneath the sea. Whatever they caught, they held forever. Bits of shipwrecked wood, skeletons of drowned sailors, bones of animals, and even the bleached ribs of a mermaid. At last, she came to the sea witch's dwelling. It was built from the bones of drowned men, its walls rising white and jagged in the dim light. The roof was made of shark skulls, their hollow eyes glaring into the dark sea. The little mermaid's courage almost failed her, but she forced herself to swim forward. She knew that only here, in this place of fear and shadows, could she find the chance to reach her prince and an immortal soul. Inside, she found the sea witch seated upon a macabre throne of bones and seaweed, her bloated, jellyfish-like body looming in the dim glow. Her short white hair clung to her face, smeared with heavy makeup, and at her sides coiled two enormous sea snakes, their tongues flickering like living whips as they guarded her in the gloom.
I know what you want. It is foolish of you, but you shall have your way. You want to get rid of your tail and have two stumps to walk on, like the humans, so that the prince may fall in love with you and give you an immortal soul. Well, then it will not be easy. I shall prepare a potion for you. Take it up to the shore before sunrise and drink it. Then your tail will wither and split into what humans call legs. You will feel great pain. Once you have taken a human form, you may never return to being a mermaid. You will never again see your father's palace, nor your sisters. And if the prince marries another, your heart will break. At dawn of the next day, your body will dissolve into sea foam, and you will be lost. I want payment. You have the sweetest voice in all the sea, and it must be mine. Without it, you will never sing nor speak again.
With a resolute gaze in her eyes, the little mermaid accepted the fateful bargain. The sea witch laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. She drew out a sharp knife and cut the voice from the mermaid's throat, capturing it in a black seashell that glowed with strange power. Then she stirred her cauldron until the potion shimmered like liquid silver.
Remember my warning, and now, go.
The little mermaid swam without once looking back, for she feared that if she did, her heart would break with the longing she already felt for her family. She swam straight toward the prince's castle. Reaching the shore under the full moon, the little mermaid drank the potion. It burned through her fragile body like a double-edged sword, and the pain was so unbearable that she fainted. When she awoke at dawn, with the first rays of sunlight warming her face, she found the prince gazing down at her with his dark eyes, so full of intensity and sorrow. When the mermaid looked down, she saw that her shimmering tail was gone, replaced by 2 beautiful legs, pale and delicate. The prince asked who she was, but she could not answer, for she had no voice. Every step was exactly as the sea witch had warned, as though she were treading upon sharp nails and cutting blades. Yet she endured, for she was at last by her prince's side, hand in hand. The people they passed stared in wonder, captivated by her beauty and the strange, enchanting grace of her walk. They dressed her in precious silks, and within the palace she was the most beautiful of them all, yet she was mute. In the great hall, she watched the maidens sing for the prince and his parents. The little mermaid grew sorrowful, for she knew her own voice was far sweeter than theirs, but she could not reveal it. Then the maidens began to dance to enchanting music, and the mermaid thought she too could show her gift. Rising gracefully, she danced before the prince and his parents. She danced more beautifully than anyone, and the prince's eyes shone with delight as he watched her. Yet he never guessed that every step she took was as though she were treading on sharp knives. The prince declared that he wished to keep her always by his side. The next morning, dressed in a boy's attire, she rode beside him on horseback. Together they visited many places, and she laughed with joy while he was enchanted by her presence. Many evenings they went down to the shore, where she would place her feet in the cool water that soothed her constant pain, while he spoke to her softly. Sometimes, when she was alone at night, she would glimpse her sisters far out at sea, waving to her with sorrowful faces. But with each passing day, the prince grew more fond of her. He loved her dearly, yet only as one loves a cherished friend, never as a bride. She looked at the prince as if silently asking why he did not love her enough to make her his bride. He embraced her tenderly and kissed her forehead. One day, he spoke to her with deep affection.
You have such a pure heart, and you are so devoted. You remind me of a young maiden I once saw long ago, though I thought I would never behold her again. Once, my ship was wrecked upon the sea, and I was cast unconscious onto the shore, near a temple where many maidens lived. It was one of them who found me there, who saved my life. I only saw her twice, but I knew at once that she was the only one in this world I could ever truly love. And you are so like her, that it feels as though you almost take her place within my heart. How fortunate I am that you were sent to me. I promise you, we shall never be parted.
The little mermaid understood then that he believed it was the maiden of the temple who had rescued him, not she. She sighed deeply. No tears would come, but a fragile hope blossomed in her heart, that if she continued to serve him faithfully and stay by his side, he might one day love her as she loved him. Yet soon rumors spread that the prince would wed the daughter of a neighboring king, and that he would soon travel to meet her. The little mermaid smiled, for she knew the prince's heart better than anyone. And indeed, the prince himself spoke to her.
Do not be troubled. My parents insist that I travel to meet this princess. But never fear, I shall not bring her home. For no woman can ever be to me what the maiden of the temple was. And if ever I were to choose a bride, it would be you. You, who resemble her so closely that my soul finds peace in your presence.
He kissed her then, playfully touched her hair, and drew her into a warm embrace. The little mermaid smiled, her heart glowing with happiness, already dreaming of her human joy and her immortal soul. The next day, she sailed with him, and by morning they reached the harbor of the neighboring kingdom. Joyful crowds lined the shore, banners fluttered in the wind, and soldiers marched in honor of the prince's arrival. Amid the festivity, he and the Little Mermaid made their way to the king's castle. The princess was not there at first, for she was being educated in a sacred temple. Yet one day she arrived. Curious, the Little Mermaid watched from afar, and could not deny her beauty. The moment the prince beheld her, he cried out in wonder. "It is she, the one who saved me upon the shore." Overcome with joy, he embraced the princess, certain that his long-lost dream had come true. Turning then to the Little Mermaid, he smiled warmly.
Now I am the happiest of men, and you, dear one, must also rejoice, for the wish of my heart has been fulfilled at last.
The Little Mermaid forced a smile, though her heart trembled. She knew the truth, that on the morrow he would wed the princess, and when the sun rose after their wedding, she would die. And so it was. The very next day, the prince and the princess were wed. That afternoon, they boarded a great ship, where a splendid tent of gold and purple had been prepared for them to spend their wedding night. As evening fell, the deck came alive with music and celebration. The Little Mermaid thought back to the first time she had seen a ship, and the first moment her eyes had met the prince's. She joined the festivities, dancing more radiantly than ever before, though each step was agony, as if blades cut into her feet, and her heart ached with unspoken sorrow. At last, the night grew late. The bride and groom retired to their golden tent, and soon silence settled over the ship as all fell asleep. Alone, the Little Mermaid walked to the rail, gazing at the horizon where the first rays of dawn would soon rise, bringing with them her death. Suddenly, her sisters emerged from the waves. Their faces were pale, their hair shorn short. They had given their beautiful locks to the sea witch in exchange for one last hope of saving her. They placed a dagger in her hands. "If you wish to live and return to us," they whispered, "before the sun rises, you must plunge this blade into the prince's heart. Then, as his blood falls, your tail will return, and you will be free to dwell 300 years in the sea before turning to foam. But if you do not, you will perish when the sun touches the water." Desperate, they urged her again. "It is his life or yours," and then disappeared beneath the waves. The Little Mermaid approached the tent, trembling. Inside, she saw the princess and the prince lying in each other's arms, sleeping peacefully. He murmured the name of his bride even in his dreams. Softly, the mermaid bent down and kissed his brow. Then, with a sigh, she slipped away, cast the dagger into the sea, and watched as the waves turned crimson. At last, she leapt into the waters herself, and as the first light of dawn broke, her body dissolved into the foam of the sea. The sun rose, casting golden light upon the vast ocean. From the shining waves, ethereal beings, transparent and radiant, floated gracefully above the sea, unseen by human eyes. Among them drifted the Little Mermaid. She looked down at her new form, so light and shimmering, and asked with a voice as airy and delicate as theirs, "Where am I to go?" A beautiful maiden drifted closer and answered gently, You shall be among the daughters of the air. Mermaids cannot gain an immortal soul unless they win the love of a human. Your fate would always have depended on another. But we, the daughters of the air, though we too have no souls of our own, may earn them through our deeds. We fly to distant lands where sickness brings death and sorrow, and we refresh the heavy air, spreading the fragrance of flowers to comfort and heal. For 300 years we strive to do all the good we can, and at last we receive an immortal soul, sharing the eternal joy of humankind. Then a solemn voice spoke within her heart. At these words, a profound joy filled her. She gazed once more upon the ship below, where life had already awakened. She saw the prince and his bride searching the waters, their faces marked with sorrow, as though they felt she had given herself to the waves. Invisible, she drifted down, touched her lips softly to the princess's forehead, and smiled tenderly at the prince. She wished them happiness with all her heart, then rose once more, ascending with the daughters of the air into the sky. Now, with the certainty that she would one day gain an immortal soul, the Little Mermaid felt truly, eternally happy.